Okay, Peter, you're all set.
Okay. Okay. Good morning. I want to convene this meeting of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee, October 8th, 2024 at 10 a.m. I'm going to read my little preamble. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you, and take care not to share your device's screen. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence all devices and phones. For items with public comment, after committee members have finished their discussion on an agenda item, the chair will afford members of the public up to 3 minutes to speak. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their name and any affiliations. To give public comment, you must be recognized by the chair and speak through the chair. There's to be no crosstalk with others in attendance. In the interest of efficient use of our time, please speak through the chair. Be recognized for making a public comment. Use the raise hand feature by clicking on the reactions tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then click on the raise hand button. When you've finished your comment, please click the lower hand button. It's important for me to note that CRAC isn't required by law to take public comment. We do so because we need your invaluable input. We view public comment as a privilege, so please remain respectful in your comments and do not disparage other speakers or members of this committee. Okay. So is it true, Leah, we don't need to do the roll call anymore?
I'm unaware of that.
Okay, we didn't have to do it at the Harbor Plan Committee, but I'll do it here. Gary Beller.
Gary, you're on mute.
Here.
Tim Brain.
Here.
Sarah Boyce.
Here.
Christy Kickham.
Here.
Doug Rose.
Here.
Rick Atherton. I'm sorry, you're next. Matt Fee. Okay. Staff, Leah Hill.
Here.
Vince Murphy.
Here.
Okay, and anticipated speakers. Rick Atherton.
I'm here.
Okay. Ava Rollins.
Present.
Okay. All right. Public comment. As we all know, but not everybody does, who's attending the meeting for the first time, this public comment is for any issues that are not on today's agenda. Does anybody have such public comment?
Peter, I'm going to read one of Mr. Connick's. That's okay. He has two
Yes.
public comments that were put into the packet,
Okay.
and he would like me to read them. One
Okay.
of them is about an agenda item, so I'll wait until agenda item number 7 to read the next one if you take public comment.
Okay.
And this one is not for something on the agenda. So this was sent on September 25th, and it said, "Good morning, Ms. Hill. We were a little surprised that Mr. Murphy said he was quite a way along in establishing the CRP districts." I think he meant CRD, and the home rule petition. When did the select board order this done? Also, who is on the group working on these taxing districts? Thank you. Please read at your next CRAC meeting. Regards, Jerry Koenig.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Okay, approval of the minutes. July 23rd, 2024.
So moved. It's Matt.
Okay, Matt, do we have a second?
Wait, I have a correction.
Okay.
So on item number
Wait,
6.
Sarah,
Oh, sorry.
we'll take a second and then your correction can be done in discussion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
Apologies. I thought we've only voted after the corrections were made. On line number 6, my name is spelled wrong. That's just the only thing. My last
Okay.
name is spelled wrong.
We haven't voted yet. I was just looking for a motion and a second, and then you have discussion, and then you vote.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
I wasn't at the meeting, but my name was spelled wrong. So
Okay. Secretaries may take note of that. Leah, go ahead.
Sarah, sorry,
Repeat.
can you clarify what you said?
Yeah,
you
at
said
the
on-
top, my name is spelled right, but on line 6, where I was voted in as vice chair, my last name was spelled Boyce. And
Okay, great, thank you.
thank you.
Okay. All right, we've had a motion and a second. I'll take a roll call vote. Gary,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
you weren't at the meeting, Sarah, so you abstaining?
Yeah, I abstain. Thanks.
Okay, Christie,
Abstain.
okay, Doug,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
chair votes aye. All right, discussion on the hold harmless citizen warrant article with Rick Atherton. It's all you, Rick.
Well, gee, thanks. Happy to be here, folks. I'm not quite sure what you're sort of interested, but I'll be happy to give you a little start. In your packet, at least the revised packet on page 148, and then the little history I put together is on, I think, 151. In essence, in 2015, I was interested in a general way, as other members of the then Board of Selectmen were, in coastal liability issues and erosion and how it's impacting our coastline. For example, in Sheep Pond Road, Mattocket, and of course, Baxter Road. And I became aware in a general way that some communities in other parts of the country had adopted bylaws to protect their communities from any claims from people who were building or lived in coastal erosion districts where that could impact their property. So I sort of working through the town manager at that time, the board was willing to ask town council to draft a sample bylaw that could be brought to town meeting that would set up a process whereby people who were building in what we call then shorefront property as defined in the zoning bylaw, but essentially property abutting the coastal erosion impacts around Nantucket, would be asked to waive liability in return for receiving building permits. And it seemed to me at the time, one reason to think about putting it in the zoning bylaw was that other places within the town structure, like the general bylaws, are just not as easy to follow. I think, I think you're all aware of that in a general way. When it's in the zoning bylaw, it's very specific and people have to follow the directives. So town council, on his own initiative, was asked to draft such a article, and he chose the zoning code and drafted the bylaw at that time that was then adopted by the board to go into the warrant. And of course, then a process follows to take it to the planning board because it's a zoning article. And when you go to the finance committee, you were asked then, and maybe you still are, to fill out a citizen warrant article questionnaire. And the one we filled out in 2019, when I'll get to this in a minute, was a citizen article. So in 2015, just to back up, the planning board did not recommend the article. They had some questions, weren't quite sure where this should go within the town code. But the finance committee disagreed with them, and the finance committee felt it was appropriate that town meeting should undertake and vote in favor of an article that protected the town from such claims. And one of the primary issues here to me in this was that people who choose to build in erosion areas where they might be impacted should accept responsibility. They shouldn't just look to the town to bail them out in a way or make a claim of some kind against the town if erosion continued onto their property and cause damage of some kind. And I think the finance committee in 2015 agreed with that. And it went to town meeting, and I think probably because of the comments by the planning board, was not adopted at that time. So then it laid somewhat dormant until I tried again in 2019 for the 2020 ATM and brought back essentially as a citizen article the same article that had been brought forward in 2015. There was more dialogue with the planning board at that time, but they still did not support the article. And the FinCom had a different membership and chose not to support the article as well. So at the annual town meeting in 2020, it was not adopted. So I think really that's just the background and the history of this, and you'll find it in the documents presented in your package. I'm not sure where your thoughts are. I think clearly you have in your crack sort of priorities statement that says updates to the zoning bylaw to encourage resilient design and limit investment in areas of high coastal risk. I think that's an overall design. And there's also a statement, I think, in there on page 12, I had at some point suggesting you consider erosion liability waivers in some form. I think it's up to crack to try and figure out if these are important enough to bring forward to vote the initiatives. I think at some point it's appropriate that you discuss them if you can, if you want to move forward with the select board and with the planning board. And the sooner that discussion took place, you find out whether there's going to be support or not for this kind of initiative to come back through your auspices. So I might just stop there for the moment and turn it back over to you, Peter.
Okay, Rick, thank you. Vince?
If you want to take committee members first, but I can add to Rick's history if it helps, and that is at your discretion, Chair.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments based on what Mr. Atherton just said? Go ahead, Doug.
Peter. Yeah, so I guess my impression is that over the last several meetings, there's been sort of a growing interest on the part of CRAC. Though we haven't taken any votes on it yet, but I get a sense that there's some enthusiasm to resurrect this idea. And I do think it is compatible with the priority to update the zoning bylaws. It's not an item that Arcadis specifically called out. But I think as we've also discussed, I think it's incumbent on us as a committee to not only push forward for what Arcadis has included, but also look for other areas that might have been overlooked. I think this is an ideal opportunity to include it in a package of recommendations that would go to the planning board, maybe to the select board first, and get a pulse check from them on that. The only thing I would consider adding to the bylaw recommendations that Rick had pushed forward in 2020 most recently was to broaden it to include not only risk of coastal erosion, but also storm surge, stormwater and groundwater flood risks, as well as daily high tide flooding. So more just the overall risks that the island is facing from all means and matters related to climate change and sea level rise. But those are my comments. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Doug. All right, go ahead, Tim.
This is just a question, if I may. Would this include just damage to personal property, or would it also include if the town is unable to provide the services it's supposed to provide due to erosion or flooding or whatever the damage is?
You want to take that, Rick?
Well, I'd be happy to take it. I think that's one of the elements where the town can be held liable under certain circumstances, and whether or not the town should incur that liability when people make a choice to develop in areas of such risk is part of the discussion that has to take place here. But let me just read on page 12, and I think in your packet, your amended packet, and I think this was in Arcadis's presentation at some point. It's in other suggestions. And number 1 is hold harmless agreement. Shift liability to property owners for developing in at-risk areas, buyer, builder, beware, So, it isn't just something that came from, my own experience and with this issue. It's something well known in, to people in the business, if you will. And at some point, I think if you want to proceed, I can send you a list of communities I found, I think initially in 2015. And there are several around the country that have already adopted such regulations, if you will. And so Peter, I think the issues of defining what is covered would really have to be get pretty specific, but I think it's intended to be broad, at least from my perspective.
If I could,
I
Peter.
agree, and I'm going to let Matthew go next, but I want to say that this, if this comes to fruition, it'd be a good thing to add to informing the realtors, because that's something a realtor would want to tell a potential buyer of property in the danger zone. Go ahead, Matt.
I'd like to hear from Vince, and I can go. I've got a note, so I won't forget.
Okay, go ahead, Vince.
Thank you kindly. So Rick has carried us through some of the history of this, and I've had to go back through the history as well to understand it. I was around when it came through in 2019 and 2020, but I wasn't around when it came through in 2015. My understanding is that both times the discussion went just about the same way. Here's the big problem with what Rick is suggesting. There's already a state law, Massachusetts General Law 258, the state's so-called tort law, that already creates and does exactly what Rick is talking about. That already is in existence, has been for decades, and indemnifies any municipality, state, town or local organization, tribal entity from this kind of risk that Rick is talking about. So it would potentially put us in a bind if we were to work on and accept something like this, to have something that is at odds with state law. We must remember that that's where we stand, that there is already something in existence that does this and indemnifies us. We are not at risk. I want to make that really very clear. Then there's another thing to consider. It's not a CRP recommendation. Cherry picking 2 lines from the CRP is a very nice way to look at what needs to be done. However, as Doug Rose has pointed out, this is not specified as a specific thing for the Coastal Resilience Advisory to do from the Coastal Resilience Plan. There's a third thing to consider too. We're in the early phases of getting ready for a retreat and relocation plan. That is where this is better suited for investigation. It might not be inappropriate, it could be jumping the gun to get ahead and push forward something like this that already exists at the state level, and get ahead of how our strategic retreat and relocation plan might work. It could put us in a secondary bind for plan development. And that's going to be a pretty big plan. And that also gets to some of the elements that Rick is concerned about. So the committee can do as they please, but I'm struggling to see the need to bring this back to town meeting a third time, especially given where we stand, having done so much to develop the CRP, and that these things are already in hand at the state level. Thanks, Peter.
So I'll go to Matt in a minute, but is it, Vincent, in existence, what exists now is exactly what we want to do, or is there a Nantucket version that we might create that would meet our needs?
That is the very, very fine and very slim distinction that I think Rick is aiming for here. But in broad terms, anyone that already builds in any flood zone or coastal risk environment or an erosion zone, we're covered. We can't get sued. It also brings up a secondary question, and I don't know the answer to this. But to my knowledge, in my time in the town has never been sued or been trying to be held liable for anything. What we do instead is we try and help those in the coastal environment, but we've never been sued. So it's again answering a perceived risk, not one that has come up to my knowledge.
Okay. All right, Matt, go ahead. Thanks, Vincent.
Yeah, I think Vincent has a couple points I agree with. You know, retreat is your best argument, Vince, is to put it in retreat and relocation and investigate and do that here, provided we truly investigate and do a good job of looking into it. On that, I think would make sense. I do think it's not as clear cut as like, oh, it's already there, because when we have situations like Baxter Road, or not Baxter, like Sheep Pond Road, we have been, you know, we have been sued, we have had to pay money, or, you know, we have had issues that happen. The state, you know, the state may say you're not responsible, but on the other side of the mouth, they're saying, but you have to provide roads and this and that and the other. So they might say you're not responsible for the damage, but then you still have to bring these roads to these places where it's impossible to bring a road. So I do think there is you know, the state hasn't caught up to the reality of climate change. I think what Rick is proposing, or, you know, and I supported it both times back when, does make a lot of sense. You know, it may be as simple as, you know, maybe we don't need to have a town. Maybe it's, if the state stuff already exists, maybe it's just something that's signed that people acknowledge that, you know, we aren't responsible. You know, maybe it's as simple as that, and we don't have to, you know, go to the state and do a zoning thing or anything. Maybe we should, you know, building department can do it now if they're directed to do it. I'm not sure. That should be looked into. The other, so that's regarding, you know, that part of it. Regarding what Doug spoke to earlier, is I think possibly instead of calling it shoreline in a new definition, I think maybe we tie it to some of our current definitions. I worry about adding all the other aspects of coastal, you know, flooding and this and that and the other. It may pick up every house on the island, you know, or it might pick up you know, a third of them or a half of them. So before we do that, I think we want to understand what the impact of that will be. I do think the initial impact to do 300 feet and, you know, and to do the ones that are you know, sort of likely to fall into the water, you know, there's a lot of sense to that. But when you start doing flooding and things, you're picking up, you know, all sorts of neighborhoods that we may not want to be doing, you know. So anyway, that's my two. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Doug?
Thanks, Peter. Just a quick follow-up for Vince. Hey, Vince, if you could share with us the specifics on that state law. I just Googled 251 and I don't know where to look because it's a large chapter. So if you could send us the specifics, I'd love to get educated on that. Thanks.
If I can, through the chair, I beg your pardon, Doug, 258, chapter MGL 258.
Thank you.
And yes, I will.
Okay, are there any more comments? No, no more comments. Is there any public comment? Any more questions for Rick? Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I think in general, this is worth exploration. I want to make sure we don't let it drop. I think that the issues that Rick has raised have only gotten worse since he first raised them. And so I hope in the retreat and relocation, it's explored. And if there's a way to do it simply by just having people sign an acknowledgement now and not have to go through town meeting or anything else, if we can just make it a policy or a, you know, administrative policy at the, you know, at the building department, I'm all for that. You know, just, you know, get the more knowledge, the more, you know, more things that are shared quickly and easily, I think the better off we all will be. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Leah, is this something that we could just write a letter to the building department and say, hey, you guys can do this, or remind them of it? Is it can we step into our advisory role and advise the building department of this? Or
Uh,
make sure that they are checking with them and see if they know of it?
I think we need to do some more research on it to see if it's as simple as what you just stated.
Okay.
But with it is a deliverable within the retreat and relocation scope that I'm writing. So that will have, legal opinion as well as consultant opinion and town staff opinion. So I think that it should just stick within that scope. And yeah, and we can go from there.
And so you'll get back to us and tell us. You'll get back to us on that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else? Okay, no public comment. Okay. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate your time.
Yep, I think I'll just jump off this and do a little YouTube to watch you, but I won't take up a portion of your screen any longer. Thanks for having me.
Okay, you're welcome anytime, for sure. Okay, all right, public outreach ideas and strategies from committee members. Basically, it's a discussion of how Ava Rollins and Acclimate can help CRAC's outreach and education campaign. So do you guys have comments now about what I'm about to say, or do you have comments?
Peter, I
Well,
just
you
have a different comment. I just want to make the committee aware that you still have quorum. There's 6 of you. So if anybody is planning on leaving, please let us know before you leave, because then we'll have to stop the meeting.
Okay, yeah, we lost Gary. Did Gary have to get off?
Yeah, he emailed me that he had a medical condition, so he had to leave.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
thanks.
All right, Doug, what's up?
Thanks, Peter. So not a comment, but a question, I guess, more for Ava.
Okay,
First of all, I think collectively CRAC owes a debt of gratitude to Acclimate for their support, and really pleased to hear that Ava's time has been approved to support us. So thank you for doing this for us. I think for the most part, our committee is composed of lay people who aren't, this is not their profession. And so, we've done some outreach efforts in the past. I would say that by most people's standards, by most professional standards, they were probably fairly modest, but good. I mean, I think we had some really nice progress collectively, got about over 300,000 impressions in social media over the course of about 9 months or something. That said, I think what we've lacked is someone like you who has had a lot of experience in generating greater awareness over causes like the one we're trying to push forward. And so I guess I would start by not offering you ideas, but ask you, Ava, if you've witnessed certain groups like ours, or Acclimate even, where they've had the greatest success, what kind of strategies they've employed to push forward on a message like awareness of what people can do to protect themselves against climate change and coastal risks. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. I agree. I'm super happy to become involved. As Vince knows, I've always wanted to support you guys more. So my background, just to kind of brief people that don't know me and haven't worked with me, I've worked with most of you directly, is in like tourism and quality of life public relations. Working with different destinations, cities, and countries in terms of how we tell that narrative. And that feeds into tourism, it feeds into property values, it feeds into the quality of life of people there on different litmuses. So I spent 5 years doing public relations for the city of Vienna, Austria, leading up to the pandemic and halfway into the pandemic. And that was, our real focus was on quality of life publicity, because it's the most livable city in the world, according to the Mercer, the Quality of Life Index. And so when you look at Nantucket, we have this incredible place where most of us have chosen to live, either full or part-time. I'm based here full-time, where there is unsurpassed natural beauty and it is breathtaking, but it is hard to live out here. And we are really feeling climate change, and how we navigate climate change is affecting quality of life, and it's affecting property values. And we are, whether we realize it or not, have this incredible, we're an incredible microcosm for coastal living on a global scale because of the prestige of Nantucket. So while you guys are, in your words, lay people, each of you is I think, very distinguished in the community. And I think that the best way to begin our collaboration together is actually to use each of you as kind of emissaries and talking heads of what you want the public to know about what's going on and why you guys have become involved. So something that we were talking about, since this is a bit of a public brainstorm right now, is making 30-second to 1-minute videos of all the members of CRAC. What's the most important thing you want to relate to the public? What questions do you have? What fears do you have? So instead of us telling people what to do or instilling any sort of fear, we're actually saying, we're excited to collaborate on this, and we're all in this together, and we're all invested in this community. We're invested in this land, and it also has this incredible premium, and we have this opportunity to lead by example in some of the things that we do, whether they are exploratory and some of them work or don't work, whether some of or whether they happen to be really successful. And I think that seems to be what we're all about. So kind of talking about a format to be able to do that, but I think we could start with those videos. And then I think also it might be nice to do either a recap or a preview of meetings, talking and using Acclimate as like a collaborator to do that. And then we've also started doing some collaborations with NRD and Town of Nantucket, with Leah talking, and she's been so wonderful. But I think what we were all saying is, like, let's get more of you on there, even if you consider yourself, like you said, like a layperson. That actually, to me, makes it more magnetic, because you're not coming in as a scientist and saying, oh, like, this is all we're doing, or an architect or a real estate builder. You're coming in as a member of the community with public concern, and to me that perks me up. So that's how I'd kick us off.
I totally agree. In a sense, we're lay people, but I'm looking at all the faces and the names here, and I mean, look, Matt Fee, he makes bread, he makes cookies, he has been on the select board 2 different runs. That's more
He's
than
an iconic tea.
Right. He's more than a lay person.
Yes.
And Sarah Boyce has worked at 2 different island conservation organizations. She's the director of research for Linda Loring Nature Foundation. That's more than a lay person. Christy Kickham is I hope I get this right, does property management. He's on the finance committee. We're not just people off the street. Ava's right. We are experts in various areas on the island, and yet we are among you. We are people that and know that we represent you, and people that the community hopefully can trust. So then people can, when we get interviewed, they'll go, yeah, I know that guy, or I know that woman, or I know that person, and they can relate to us. And it puts faces to the committee, which I think is really important. The more we can do that, the better. Then you can get approached and then ask questions, and then you get to talk. And I think another thing Ava could do to give us, each of us, to unify us would be an elevator speech, so that when we talk to people, this is what we're doing. We have, and the data, the most up-to-date data, if someone says, well, when's the water going to be up? Well, it's going to be up at this height and this, like that. And what are you guys doing? And not something really long, but something you could carry around maybe on your phone if you need it, if you got approached, and or you learn it, and so that whenever, and I'm sure that we're all doing that now in some way, but if it was more unified and more so that they're getting the same message from all of us. Ava, and then I'll go to Christy.
You'd like me to respond first, Peter?
Yeah, you go ahead and then I'll go to Christy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that would be great. Something that I do with clients when I begin to work with them is a process called a creative brief, where I sit down and I ask you, like, what are you working on and why are you working on it and why does it matter and how do you chart success, right? And usually there's some bespoke questions in there, but I think if everyone's open to it, in the process of making these little videos, we have one-on-one 20 to 30 minute meetings where I meet with each of you and I do a little bit of a creative brief of like, why are you involved in CRAC and what's the most important thing to relate to the public and why does it matter to you? And I'll use that brief to create some concepts for kind of an elevator pitch of what you guys are working on that you could collectively provide input on. And we'd also, in the context of that, make these little snippet videos that we would use as tools for communicating more with the public. But yeah, I think, because so many of us wear so many hats and we live in this, community where we all know each other in these different capacities, that just humanizing ourselves and making this more conversational and collaborative instead of I'm the expert to inform you, even though some of you can definitely weave in those expert credentials, is the way to involve the public more from what I've seen in my involvement with other councils and organizations.
Okay, thanks, Ava. And I mentioned Christy, so Sarah, if you don't mind, I'll take Christy and then I'll go to you. Go ahead, Christy.
So I think Sarah was up before I was, Peter.
All right, go ahead, Sarah.
That's all right.
That's it. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I really appreciate, Ava, that you being here and helping us unify the message. I think just to kind of bring together a few different points, I think we all have different areas of expertise. And so even though like I'm a scientist, I'm not a climate scientist by training. And I think this is such a big issue of like climate change broadly and especially within the advisory committee that we touch on so many different topics. So to your point of like kind of humanizing the members of the committee and when we talk about what, it's like what we're learning as well. So thinking of, just all the different aspects of like the policy components and, the financing of things. And then there's, of course, the nitty gritty of some of the projects and the engineering behind that. But then there's like the governance pieces and just, I don't know, there's so many different pieces of the work that we do that I think no one can be an expert on everything. And so that's why like the makeup of the committee has to be diversified. And so I think I really like that of, talking about what people are interested in or what, like what we're working on or those little snippets. And I think that in general, we're trusted members of the community. So like what Pete was saying about that we like people know us, that we're like part of the community, but we're in different ways people that we're trusted members of the community. So I know that when I hear a message from someone that I know, I can listen a little bit more. So I think I really like that idea of those short bits, whether they're about us specifically or things that we're working on, or, if one of us delivers the 30-second, like, this is what happened at the meeting last week, here are some highlights.
That could be cool too. Mm-hmm.
And I like that you said that. And I really appreciate too, Pete talking about unifying a message, because I think, especially around certain topics, like the town warrant article or something like that, that would help us give like like you're at the coffee shop or something and someone asks you about it, to have the correct language. 'Cause I think if it's a new topic to me, I get nervous if I say the wrong thing and then someone has a different impression of what I'm trying to get across because I use the wrong language or something like that. So those are just a few thoughts. The other thing I blanked on the other thing I was going to say was kind of broadly to the group too, is what are the messages that we're trying to get across? Because there's definitely like the specific projects or specific things we're working on. Is it important for us to be like, this is a crack stamped project, right? And I say that only because some of the things that have happened in the past year are people coming to our meetings thinking that we're responsible for something that have nothing to do with our committee necessarily. Projects the town's working on, projects the land bank's working on, like just because we're the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee doesn't mean that we control every climate change related project on the whole island, nor do I think we want to. But I think it's almost as much telling people what we are doing as subtly telling people what we're not doing or not responsible for. And I don't know what that message is, but just to be careful, like I guess to be careful and clear what's crack and what's not.
I love that you brought that up, and I think that will be important, and I'm going to look to you guys for counsel on that. But is crack the amalgamation of each of your distinct expertise offerings, opinions, and we're presenting, Sarah from crack or Sarah in your capacity as a member of crack? Or do we want to really tighten up and say, these are our core pillars, and that's what we espouse in a public situation? And I would defer to you guys, Peter.
Okay, go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, thank you. Sarah, all great points. Awesome. Yeah, one of my, just expanding on one thing that Sarah had mentioned, about, I think we can all learn from each other, whether we're members or members of the public, or committee members. I do think, introductions into who we are, and but I also think what's important is the process on how things come to us, staff, the committee work that we do, how we advise, how projects get reviewed. I think the process, just so people aren't confused, and I think that things are just going to get more and more complex and plentiful, that I think it would be nice to just make sure that people understand the flow of a project on how it comes to us and is reviewed and then further expanded on as far as moving forward. But I do think understanding process for the public would be really helpful. I think that starting out, catching people up to speed on progress, things that we've done in the past, not just looking forward, but looking back on some of the things that we've already worked on. I know that some months ago, Leah gave us a nice review of a lot of the projects, just going back on those and sort of getting people that are interested, getting them caught back up to speed on, what have we done so far. I think that would be really helpful, reminding people that our meetings are open, that we do, as I said, learn from each other. And we are certainly learning along the way. So we're all in the same boat there. I think that, some sort of definitions of the week, would be nice for people if there's a sort of portal where people can, often people have a calendar on their desk with definitions or bullet points of something they like. But I think it'd be nice to sort of entertain maybe doing some sort of definition of the weeks to educate people on some of our verbiage that is within our realm. Would be kind of nice. And yeah, that's about it for now.
Cool. Thank you, Christy.
Yeah.
Leah, go ahead.
Thanks, Peter. It sounds like maybe the first video should be like an introduction to crack and who they are and what their charge is and, the purpose and all of that, and then break it up into all the other subjects that have been mentioned here. I think some people know about crack and other people have no idea. And so it would be great to be able to get the word out via video of, you know, all the work they've been doing in the past and then for the future. I love the idea about the definitions because I was thinking it would be great to have different videos of the coastal hazards that we experience on Nantucket and showing like real footage of it to so that people, you know, when they see it, they say, oh, that's sunny day flooding. That's different than coastal flooding. And so being able to distinguish between the different hazards, I think is important as well. But I love the idea. And Ava, just logistically, I guess, how do we help you with this? And then like as far as a schedule and as far as Acclimate's funding, did they give you until, you know, a certain month that you can work on this? And how does that work?
We're funded through the end of the year, and then we would go back for additional funding and review everything and see how it's feeling for everyone. And if it's worthwhile and it feels satisfying for everyone, I would recommend that we continue to do it. So this is kind of these next couple of months, which is great as we get into stormy season, to kind of test out different things and see how they feel. I think that we could gather content in the same way and then amalgamize the content to do like a what is crack to start from all that. But I think I want to do all of the interviews to be able to do that, because I want everyone's input to create some concepts on what you guys are, because I think we need to all agree before anything is put out into the public. You guys need to all agree, and I need to kind of synthesize it. And then in terms of, I love your idea about the coastal flooding and gathering content. And that's where I think we could create a strategy to engage the public more, because there's no better way to amateur storytell than having members of the public gather that content. And I think, you know, some of it will make it obviously to the current, if it's like clickbait enough. I say that with love for them. But I think for us to have it be more comprehensive, and I could present some ideas for a strategy on how we could engage the public more to provide us with that content that we could repost. And I think if people know that it's going to end up on like Town of Nantucket, Acclimate, maybe NRD, like triple kind of thing of like this, we're chronicling and we're also creating records, and that it's useful from a scientific perspective to do that, that we could engage more people to gather that kind of content. You know, not that I'm always happy to go measure erosion with you in the middle of winter, Leah, as we did last winter. But it's also fun to have people who are out there already get fun content, kind of like, you know, the weatherman who's underwater.
Yeah. And then I just have one more question. So will that be like, will you be providing weekly posts for us? So Thursdays, the Coastal Resilience Day for the natural resources to post on, or would it be, you know, every
Whatever
other
you
week or
guys,
something?
I think that we could, I'm open to whatever you feel is makes the most sense. I think that could be as much as once a week if you feel like we have the content to do that. Or it could be twice a month. Like, you know, you guys tell me kind of what you want. I think the first thing would be to kind of gather this content and then see what we have and kind of start laying that out. But again, we could also do that like preview recap of what's going on with crack. And forgive me, I'm not sure who said it, but I kind of love the idea of you guys taking turns doing the little preview recap versus just a static post. Like this week, we're going to be discussing this, like, you know, we welcome input from the public on X. And I could obviously help a little with synthesizing that messaging if it's helpful. Or you guys could just kind of tap in to do that. And yeah, I think both of those avenues would be a great start. I don't want to take on too much and overwhelm you guys, because I know each of you are so busy with all of your own stuff. So I just really want to be respectful of your time and make sure that this is something that's positive and helpful and not another thing to do.
What did you mean by preview recap?
So I was thinking about like the actual crack meetings And I
Okay.
believe someone had said like maybe we kind of do a preview and a recap. I think it was Leah when we were originally concepting out. So is that something that we want to explore of like, you know, this week at Crack, we're going to be discussing X and Y, and there's an opportunity for public engagement with Y and Z. Or this week we kind of discussed this and we netted out on this. You know, just a more palatable way to engage than watching the full video.
And have that be, and turn that into a reel on Instagram, something like that?
Yeah, like I would shoot it, or someone would do a selfie and send it to me, and that could be a reel on Instagram.
So maybe Leah and I doing a preview of the meeting.
I think that
And-
would be fun. And it's wherever possible, I think it'd be really fun to like mic you and do it outside too.
And then maybe rotate in committee members to do a recap
Yeah,
so that everyone gets a shot.
yeah.
And
The
I want
ones
to,
that we've done outside have usually been like the most magnetic. Lee and I did a bunch last year. Sarah and I have done a bunch of reels, and just because people want to see the natural world of Nantucket. And I was thinking as we were talking that you know, I loved when you were kind of describing Matt's range, but like having one of our questions be like, what is your favorite part of the natural environment of Nantucket? To just remind people that so much of the magic of the island is the natural world. And that's also how we did tourism storytelling for other destinations I've worked with, is like the wine and the coffee and the tomatoes and, you know, all these different things. And when we have as healthy a relationship as possible with the natural world, we can enjoy those kind of fruits of everything. And I think that relates to our resilience of how we're treating natural resources.
and I don't know what you would do with this, but we have a sort of semi-regular effort where we do site visits. We go to vulnerable areas around the island and hopefully have the expert that knows that situation meet us there, and it informs the committee of what's happening there. And
so I would love to video those, because I actually, Will and I kind of did that with Sarah Boyce and Jen Carberg and Neil Foley and a whole bunch of people over the last couple of years. So it'd be nice to do some updates on those formally with Crack. That's very much something we would be excited to support. So yeah, we would just mic you in the field and you would tell us what's going on, and we would get that up as content so people can see what's happening.
okay. Two other things. There's an app that Leah is trying to get us to use. It's called My Coast, and you can, while you're watching, you know, those kids in the canoe down in front of Stubby's paddling along, you can take that photo and post it. And too bad we couldn't create an app for ourselves, but that's another avenue. And then
Well, I would say, Peter, sorry to interrupt.
go ahead.
We could definitely do that. The Acclimates also will spearheaded a coastal resilience walk, which is a website that
Yep.
looks at past, present, and future projections of points of interest on the island. So that could also, I have to discuss it with him, but that would also potentially be a place where we could put that data, because down the line that could also be a very cool app, because the idea is we have the QR codes so people can kind of see like, this is what to open people to adaptation. So this is what this space kind of used to look like. This is what's going on right now. Here are some concepts for the future of how we would handle climate change in the area.
Okay. And then I've got sort of an analog suggestion. So this past week, the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative held its 20th anniversary science showcase, and lots of hikes and guided experiences by scientists and naturalists around the island. And I happened to be at the after party at Linda Loring Nature Foundation on Thursday. Sorry, Sarah, but where I picked up this napkin. Everybody see it? And it's fun facts about Linda Loring Nature Foundation.
It's old news though, by the way. We use them because they're from like 2016.
Right, okay, it doesn't matter when it was created, it's a napkin. Someone's gonna wipe lipstick off it, they're gonna wipe cocktail sauce, but either way, whether there's stuff printed on it or not, it's going into the trash. And if you could get the vital information that we want people to know onto a napkin and then get restaurants to have them, you know, you reach for you pull the napkins out of the dispenser at Stubby's, and maybe you look at it, maybe you don't, but if there's going to be napkins there anyway, maybe things could be printed on it. I don't know.
I think that could be really cool if we wanted to explore that after we do our briefs.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because we would want it to not be dire. Maybe it could be like a quote of Matt Fee's favorite thing about the nature of the natural world of Nantucket, and also one fact to know on behalf of crack. So like you're giving people both, you know,
Yeah, and
here's something
give-
special, here's something educational.
Yep. I didn't mean dire. I just meant,
Yeah.
you know, just a way to inform people, hey, there's a plan. Hey, here's a committee. Here's the link, stuff like that.
Yeah. And do we have like, is there any sort of KPI in terms of driving people to any website or the town website, or do we care, or, you know, since you don't have your own social channel?
KPI.
Yeah, like way we would measure, like, are we trying, is there any sort of call to action in terms of how we would want to, like, we would want to direct people that were interested to engage and support? Is it just to join the meetings, to be better citizens? Have we thought about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks. Yeah, I was gonna say in my notes, I forgot to mention this before, was what were those action things? And I wasn't thinking, maybe it was sort of the call to action, not necessarily like that very direct, like where to click and like what we're trying to get out of that immediate message, but more like, because the climate change aspects can be the gloom and doom and dire, and sometimes, and we're really focused on the messaging about what we're doing and things like that. I think maybe trying to, you know, and maybe this is part of the more of the strategy that we can talk about later, but having those action items, or so people feel like they can do something, whether it's come to a meeting, although not everyone can come to our meeting, we've been told that because of when they are, but you know, supporting different initiatives, or you know, adding the MyCoast app on their phone, or, you know, whatever, like making sure every single thing has something for them to do, even if it's pretty small, because I agree with you, Ava, about like having those positive messages and people remembering like why we enjoy living here, and the importance of the natural world, and kind of puts perspective into all the different aspects of whether it's resiliency or just conservation in general, what we're doing. But having that like call to action in a way, I don't know what that is for every different message. Sometimes it might be obvious, but sometimes you might have to think creatively about what that message is, but being action oriented.
Is Joanna on today?
No, she's not.
I was just also thinking, there, you know, she's so great with distilling down messages. And so in terms of the Clean Water Coalition, they've really honed it in on, you know, these three areas that we can focus on in terms of contributing to healthy coasts. And I wonder if we might want to collaborate a little bit there, you know, because one of those things is like, you know, if you know, planting natives or alternatives to fertilizer, or, you know, checking your stormwater situation, or those types of things might also play in. Or you guys could kind of give me a list, but just so people don't feel overwhelmed, because I think the most common thing that I hear is like, oh, well, this is all happening, there's nothing that I can do because it's such a big behemoth, right? So if there are little steps that empower people, just like seeing that you guys are relatable, recognizable members of the community, and then like, okay, yes, I can do these little things. And then you become so aware that these little things can really add up, or that, Gail Walker can make an initiative for the lights, and now you can't put up lights that are destroying these like natural habitats of avian life and things and driving people insane at night. So I think people have more power than they realize that they do. So how to empower people with any of these messages we might put out so that they're fun, almost kind of like the old, if we're going to do it, I always loved the old Nantucket Nectar's caps, with the little things, the little messages on the top. As someone who is of age to jump off the back of the old shop. So I think that something like that could be cool if we made it kind of kitschy and cute, and it contributes positively to tourism, but lets people know that we're not checked out, not thinking about these things.
Okay, Leah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment as far as, where for people to click and stuff. I think it's going to change depending on what the content is, but as, as much as we can bring them to the town's coastal resilience page, there's a lot of information there.
Yeah.
Still some stuff needs to get added, but that's a great way to get people there.
Great.
And I love the idea of giving little like snippets of simple things that you can do in your home or property to, help mitigate flooding or erosion or whatever it may be. Because I hear that a lot too when I'm giving a lot of presentations to homeowners associations, is like, oh, well, this is all happening and we can't do anything. And it's like, well, you can. If everybody does, a little something, that's going to make a big difference.
So that would be the coastal-resilience-plan main page. Yeah.
If you just go to www.nantucket-ma.gov/CRP,
Okay.
it should come up. And I can send you the link too.
Yeah, okay, that sounds a little different. Great.
Okay, is there anybody else who wants to tell Ava anything? And so then I would say, what do we do next? Are you going to interview us next?
Yeah, so I think the next would be for you to empower me to communicate directly with each member of the committee, and we start a spreadsheet that is publicly, like, that's accessible to everyone, where I make a time to meet with everyone on the committee to do a little creative brief. Or I can distill down the questions I would want to do first, and we could approve them first at the next meeting, whichever you guys think would be better.
You mean the questions that you're going to ask us?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you guys think? Do you want to just be interviewed, or do you want to approve the questions at the next meeting and then go forward? Doug?
I kind of like the idea of keeping it organic. Just have, we don't know what's going to come of the initial conversations with Ava. So, I think it could be iterative. I don't think we have to pre-approve everything. Thanks.
Also, as I tell my clients, you don't have to answer anything you don't want to. So, and you can answer questions I don't ask that you might, that I haven't even thought of. So I'm just going to put together a couple. We'll keep these under 30 minutes. So yeah, if you could either send me names and emails, Peter, of everyone, or just or a spreadsheet with them on it. And then I'll just be reaching out one-on-one. If that makes sense structurally, and we'll set up those times, and I can, pop by your office, or we can do a Zoom depending on where you are.
Maybe you could do them in our natural environments where we're most comfortable,
Yes.
so people will see who we are, what we do, type of thing, as opposed to
Yes.
by Zoom. So you might do me outside somewhere on a walk.
I would much prefer to do them in person. Yes.
Okay. So I think Leah can get you all of our contact information.
Great.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh yeah, I just didn't know. I'm super comfortable if you ask questions off the cuff, but for people who don't normally have to talk for their jobs or give presentations, I think it might be a combination of maybe some pre-approved questions, not to speak for everyone else, but I also don't know if we need to like have anything approved by the town.
I think
Like
what I
for,
could
you
do
know,
is,
I don't know what the, if, I don't know, this is my first committee and I've been on it since 2016, but it's my first committee, or not 2016, 2019, I guess. I always want to make sure like that if there's certain questions that have to get approved, Leah.
yeah, I mean, they're all the questions we talked about today, but I think what I was going to do in recap to this is just put them all in an email back to Peter and he can share them with you guys so that you're briefed ahead of time.
Yeah, and you don't have to answer them, and they're not going to ask who you dated when you were in high school. It's not going to be anything like that.
You can feel free to share personal anecdotes.
Well, I think that you're just from today's discussion, you're getting a sense of what types of questions you're going to be asked.
Totally. But I also think the more that we can humanize ourselves, the better, because we're all humans living in this natural environment that we only have so much control over. So, so these questions will be kind of what we talked about today, which is, you know, who you are and why you're involved, and you know, what's the most important thing you want to relate to the public? What's your favorite part of the natural environment of Nantucket? And how do you define success, you know, for you personally or for this organization? And that's basically going to be it, unless you guys have others that you'd love to see asked of everyone.
Well, two things. Since you're funded to the end of the year and to go forward, you'll have to ask for more money. If we have to wait 2 weeks to just approve questions, when during that period of time you could be asking us and interviewing us, if you're better off getting started. And then number two, you know, you could give the questions to Leah, and Leah could have them vetted by whoever, so that you're sure that it's okay to ask us, and then it's just us.
Yeah,
like you
I'll send these over to you and Leah today.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's fine.
I love it.
Go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, if I just throw out a suggestion, you know, you could also, instead of as an option, instead of just being one-on-one and having like, you know, interviewing someone, you could have like talking to 2 people or even talking to the committee, so that it's so that you might have a little more, it'll be a little less static and maybe a little more banter and sort of discussion, maybe little few points back and forth. You know, each committee member can kind of bounce off the other with ideas and thoughts and, you know, answers to questions. It's just a thought to just sort of make it a little more committee-like, I guess, you know, as opposed to just like an individual interview. I just throw that out as an option. I'm fine with, you know, any way we all decide.
I would say I would give you guys the option. Would you prefer some one-on-one quality time, or would you like to grab another committee member and I'll speak with you both at the same time? But if you want to do that, I would empower you to make that plan directly with that other committee member.
Yeah, maybe if I may, Peter, maybe maybe the introductions are individual, and maybe there is a topic that lends itself to having the committee in front of you and us, you know, talking in that respect, sort of somehow like that.
Before I go to Leah, thanks, Christy. I would say that we'd all do individual first, one-on-one, and then at the end it would be all of us together.
Something like that.
Something like that, so that they see that we're not just running the whole thing by ourselves. Here's the committee, here we are, and you throw out one question, and then we all talk about that or something like that.
Peter, if I may, yeah, because you know, otherwise, you know, people that are tuning in are basically tuning in to maybe hear a topic on a meeting that they're interested in, or maybe they missed a meeting, wanted to catch up on it. But I do think in a different setting, other than going to the town website to look at a meeting, you know, a discussion on a point would give the public a really good idea how the committee sort of works, interacts together, which I think would be kind of a benefit.
Okay, go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. So I'm crafting an email to Florencia just to triple check. When Ava and I did this last winter, she said it was fine. So I just want to ask again to make sure that the communications office is all set with it. And just see how it plays within the town's media policy.
And maybe
But the
we
town-
could add in, like we did last year, that we're happy to have it be a collab with her for the town. So that it's more content for her and she can provide creative input as we progress.
Yeah, so Ava, when you send me the questions, I'll just put that in the email.
Perfect.
So
Thank
that
you,
sounds
Leah.
good. Thanks.
Okay. We still have one more agenda item. Go ahead, Vince.
Really briefly, thanks, Peter. Just going back to one of the things you said, Peter, I have no issue with you doing a group event to have all the committee members together. Just make sure it's posted.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's not as casual as one-on-one, so.
I think that it could, even though I love the idea of it being a little more casual in that environment, and maybe that would be very nice for like a public event, it could come off as cliquey if we split into smaller groups. So I think my recommendation would be respectfully that we do the one-on-ones and then also the full group for now.
Yeah, that's the point I'm getting to. For the full group, it has to be posted because you are deliberating or discussing committee business.
Okay, thanks, Vince. All right, anybody have anything else? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I don't hear anything. Thank you so much for coming, Ava. Thanks for all your awesome ideas. Thanks for everybody who participated in this.
My pleasure. And, I just really appreciate what you guys are doing. And, as a member of another committee that can, for the town, it's like, I know that this can sometimes feel like very thankless work. And I just want to thank you all for what you're doing. So thanks for including me, and I'll be in touch and I'll email you now, Leah. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, Ava. All right. We move on to discussion on updating the zoning bylaw and regulations with coastal resiliency. I trust everybody had a chance to see what I sent out. And I guess I can go first, or does anybody have anything? I guess I'll just go first. In those three plans that I sent, those links, they all had really cool graphics and great things to say. The thing that stuck out to me the most is that they're just plans and they haven't really made any, doesn't look like they've made any real zoning changes. They're proposing to do things and they have recommendations, but here we are sitting, thinking about it, trying to make it go. Hopefully trying to make it go. I'd say we're kind of ahead of the curve. And I need to say this, this is a hard task. We're not going to do it overnight. We're not going to do it maybe even by the end of the year. But it's what we've been charged with. It's part of our mission. Our CRP recommendations priority list has zoning bylaw updates at the top of the list. We have to do this. And remember, they're just advisories. This is what we think the select board should do. We come up with it. We agree that this is what we want to advise the select board on. They can bat it away and say, no, this is a dumb idea. And we go back to the drawing board. But this is, it's like Ava said, it can be kind of dry and it can be kind of a thankless job. And I've said it before at other meetings, we're the longest range planners in the town. So it's hard to envision what the results of what we do here at these meetings are. The best I can say is that we're laying the groundwork for the people who are coming after us, and we're protecting the island in the future. And I'm excited about being on this committee. Otherwise, I wouldn't be chairman for a second year in a row. And I'm just trying to I'm just trying to, by sending those bulleted items out and by sending those links out to you guys, it's trying to inspire you. And if you don't have to come to the meeting with the perfect thing that solves everything, but I'm just trying to get the discussion going. So one idea that I had was, it'll probably get some people fired up. So anybody who's listening, this is just an idea. It's nothing that's been written down or even fleshed out because I haven't told anybody about it. So we might take the best data we have for a certain year in the future and say, from this point forward, no more building in this zone because we know what's coming. We know that you won't be able to build there. After a certain point, you won't be able to, if your house gets washed away, you're not going to be able to replace that. It's just an idea. So, Doug, you have anything?
Thanks, Peter. Yeah. I have a whole range of thoughts. I'll just start with one, and it kind of was spurred by doing the minutes from the last meeting. I think within the committee, there are multiple mindsets about how to attack this beast, because it is a big beast. I heard a number of people last meeting talk about, don't bite off more than you can chew, eat the elephant one bite at a time, whatever the metaphor was. Everyone was saying, let's get a quick win. Let's right. So that's one sort of mindset, is let's not try to attack this entire challenge in a comprehensive way. But there was another mindset, and I think, Peter, you might have been one to voice it, which was, guys, we need to do this as a comprehensive task, and it's going to take years. It's not going to take weeks or months. Like I candidly, Peter, I don't think we're anywhere near making anything happen this year.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this more analogous to the wetland protection bylaw effort, which took, depending on how you define it, it took at least 5 years, right? I don't think that's unrealistic. I think it could very well take multiple years to do it if we really do want to attack this comprehensively. And I think I have a bias toward that mindset. Let's not try to grab one little item, one little thing that's kind of captured our attention for the moment. Let's really try to make sure we've developed a comprehensive checklist of things that really ought to be at least discussed and evaluated by the planning department, by NPNEDC, whoever else has to weigh in on this, right? Because it may take as much effort to do one thing as it does to do a more comprehensive overview. So that was one thing I wanted to ask, was what is the consensus in this committee? Do we want to rush down a path and chase one thing that has us all excited? Or do we want to say, wait, we're going to take our time. We're going to develop this in a very sort of patient and disciplined manner. And we're going to also think hard about what is the right process to get this work done. Because I have a whole set of other questions and thoughts about that. I'll stop with that though. Thanks.
I agree with you. And maybe I was the one that said that, or maybe it was someone else, or maybe I agreed with that person, but I don't think the select board will appreciate that one thing unless there's one thing that we have to address right now, and they want us to do that. But a comprehensive, this is where we'll say, here are 8 things in the zoning bylaw that need to be changed as soon as we possibly can, given that we have, say, a couple of years to do it. We don't know what they are yet, but and again, they're just recommendations, advisories, but we've gone through it. We've done what you wanted us to do. We've worked on one of our top priorities, and here's what we think. And those will just be ideas that, if they're accepted, that then could be developed beyond that by the people who make them become reality. So in that way, I agree with you. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it is that I think what we've landed on is we would like to have the recommendations in the CRP. We'd like to see those implemented. And so I'm not sure we have to remake the wheel, really. I think we could, maybe our letter to the select board is, please direct the planning, the proper people at planning, et cetera, to implement these. maybe it's as simple as that. Instead of us trying to write them or say what we think they are or do that. And if the problem we'll have is I'm not sure the staff is, if there's enough bodies or expertise to do that. So we probably have to get someone outside to do that. And then the question becomes, who controls that process and what do they tell them to do or not do? And so, I really, because I'm afraid if we come up with a list, even if we spend a lot of time and it's the best thing ever, that it's going to go into this political process and be, either not acted upon or we're too busy. We can't look at it. This isn't what we want. The public isn't ready. We have to have this voted on. It's not going to be supported. We're going to go into that whole meat grinder of sort of passive aggressive, nothing will happen. And so I'm wondering is there a better way to do this? Should we be saying we strongly support these recommendations? We strongly support the select board, and Libby take, action to have these recommendations put into writing. And, we are willing to look at them when they come back. We're willing to, or do we want to recommend, I'm just spitballing, do we want to recommend a process that includes the public or includes those, charrettes or something, I think we should be thinking almost more that way. Get them all done, try to work on it all at once. If we're trying to do it ourselves or asking other people who are kind of, busier than we are even maybe, or know less than we know about it, I think we'll be disappointed. So I'm trying to think, is there a better way to do this? And it's important that whatever happens, that the staff has buy-in, that they've participated, that they're, it has to be generally great. This is what we're doing and we're all on board. Anyone along the way not on board, I think this thing will be languish for longer. So thanks.
Thank you, Matt. I think what I was thinking about having you guys read both the CRP recommendations and look at the zoning bylaw was, is there anything else we can do? Is it all in here? Does there need to be more in here? And I like what Matt has to say, but I just didn't want anything to be left out. We can say, okay, everything that's in the CRP, we want the select board to make that happen. But we'd be remiss, I think, if we didn't, make sure that there was something we missed. Anyway, go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, just jumping on something you just said. I know you said you don't want anything to be left out, but I do think that over time, and this is probably a reason both sort of trains of thought would work, whether we do it sooner or we do it as a longer process, as a thorough process. But you say you don't want to miss anything, but I think over time, situations are going to present themselves along the entire process. So I do think that this is definitely, to Doug's point, it is kind of a sort of a work in progress. It's going to develop, things are going to change. And I do think that it would be difficult to get everything perfect right now. But to Matt's point, I think if we do get going on it sooner than later, then we are better educating ourselves to recognize down the road when we can sort of apply sort of what we're doing to, zoning. So those are just a comment.
All right. Thank you, Christy. Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Christy. Maybe to clarify the choice maybe that we're presenting ourselves with here, it's do we, as an example, begin to chase at rapid speed this limited liability idea that we discussed earlier and just go headlong into that and let everything else wait? Or do we take a route that says more likely, hey, this limited liability idea deserves some attention and it could fit into a more comprehensive zoning bylaw update? And I guess this is where my bias is let's do the latter, not the former. Let's look at any idea that excites us, and limited liability is one that excites me. Let's look at that as part of a list, a comprehensive list of things that we think deserve attention. Now, admittedly, that idea is not in the CRP. So there's an example of something that we can add into the CRP list. I think that makes sense. So now we've added at least one new bullet. I looked at the model floodplain overlay district zoning bylaw, optional higher standards piece that was in the packet. And there were a couple things in there that I don't think were in the CRP, but would potentially belong on our comprehensive list. So I guess what I'm saying is my bias would be, let's make sure we come up with a comprehensive list before we begin chasing individual action items. And once we've agreed and we feel good that we've got, okay, these are the 10 or 15 or whatever it is number of items that we think belong in an updated bylaw, then we pause and say, now, what's the process through which we can get this done best? And I'm hoping that's kind of blending some of the things Matt said, some of the things Peter said, some of the things Christy said, and maybe even some of the things Sarah said. I don't know. I'll stop now. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. As far as process goes, I think we'll have a little bit better idea at the next meeting when Shannon Holst comes and talks to all of us about, she works for Woods Hole Sea Grant, and she does floodplain management and helps all the towns actually. And there's now an updated bylaw that all of coastal towns have to adopt. And I don't think Nantucket has yet. So she has helped all of the towns do that. And I think as she explains that, there might be some pieces that are, you know, in our CRP list or the list that I put together from people doing their homework and from the CRP that may already be addressed in this updated bylaw that is mandatory by the state. So I think we'll get a little bit more idea, but I agree that it should be comprehensive. And I don't think that we should pick one little part because this is a long process and, you know, there'll have to be public hearings and it'll have to be vetted by legal counsel and all of that stuff. Oh, and also adopted at town meeting. So this is like the first step of putting all of the things that are in the CRP, maybe some things that have not made it in the CRP, but the committee thinks that should be in it. And then all of that information, we, like Matt said, that can be a recommendation to the select board to have planning plus, you know, all of us get together and start looking at our zoning bylaw and how can we integrate coastal resilience within it. So, you know, we can't, although it'd be nice just to hand them the CRP, they're overworked. You know, they might not have a background in coastal resiliency, so they, you know, it's going to be a collaborative effort, and this is just the first step. So you all are helping push it forward because that's what you voted on. And that is one of the higher priorities when you made that list in the spring. I think it was number 2 was updating the zoning bylaw. So that's where we're at now. I do like the idea of Matt was saying with charrettes and all of that stuff, but that's stuff that we need funding for. So that's something that we would have to explore as well.
Thanks, Leah, for explaining all that. Go ahead, Gary. You're on mute, Gary.
Sorry about that. I'm in favor of what Matt was saying about sticking with the recommendations. I've made this comment before. We had these brilliant experts come up with the plan, the CRP, and in that plan, they put together these zoning recommendations, and I think we ought to move ahead with that. We ought to suggest that we'd like to get those things moving. What Leah was just talking about, the change that Massachusetts is requiring, that is one of the recommendations in the CRP, and it's one of the minimum recommendations. So it all fits together. I don't think, you know, when you send out, Leah has sent out copies of that zoning thing, 110 pages of small type that I can't possibly make heads or tails of. So that's far beyond my expertise, and I'm happy to go with the expertise that Arcadis provided, including the recommendations to the zoning changes that should be made by us. And that's way I think we should go. We should tell the select board we'd like to get moving on those and see which, especially starting with the minimum minimum changes, which we ought to get over the next year or two moving.
I agree with you, Gary, and I agree with what Leah said and what everyone else has said. I just think that we need to go over it ourselves and see if we're including everything. And I don't want to just say, here it is. Okay, you guys do it. Hand it off to the next person and make sure they do it. I want us to make our recommendations. I mean, if that's the case, the recommendations are there. The select board has them. They exist. They're on the website. So let them figure it out. Let them do it. But they need us to push it through, I think. Otherwise, why are we here? We can listen to all the committee reports, all the presentations we want from all the experts. I just think it's up to us. Or I'm the only one thinking that. I don't know. Go ahead, Gary.
What is up to us, let's assume we're going to go with the recommendations in the CRP. The next step would be for us to say, tell the select board, we plan to move forward with these zoning recommendations. And then the next step would be for us, our committee, to send a request to Leslie Snell or the planning board saying, will you please do whatever research is necessary for you to start implementing these three things. You know, that's what we talked about. And when we talked about with her, they hadn't started that yet. So that's the step we could take. Ask the planning board, who has to approve these things, to start doing whatever is necessary to make the research that they would have to have completed in order to make the recommendation to go into the zoning changes at the annual town meeting.
Okay, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And Gary, I hear you. I had the same inclination when we started talking about this about 4 or 5 meetings ago that we should start with the CRP. I think the only thing that's being debated right now, Gary, is do we stop with the list of suggestions that are coming from the CRP? Those are non-negotiable. Those are going to happen, right? Those are going to be part of CRAC's recommendation. What we're talking about now is, do we add to that list? And I think I would argue I feel like we're very close to having a pretty comprehensive list. If you add the other suggestions that Leah added on page 13 of the packet, there's another 6 that were not part of the CRP, but I think in hindsight may have been overlooked. And one of them was the topic that we talked about earlier today, the hold harmless agreement. I understand that probably requires more investigation. I hear Vince's point, maybe it's not necessary, but I think there's enough, appeal to that idea that it's worthy of at least us looking at it with more detail. And there's 4 or 5 others. I saw at least 1 or 2 others in that the floodplain bylaw suggestions that Leah appended that I guess we'll learn more about at the next meeting, right? With Shannon, the guest that's coming next time, right? So all I'm saying is I think we're close to having a comprehensive list. It might not be 12 like there were in the CRP. There might be 18. And I think it's worth us locking in on those 18 and making sure each of us understands what those represent, then going to the select board and saying, here's our list of recommendations. Do we have your support so we can push forward? That's how I'm looking at it. Thanks.
That's how I look at it as well, and very well put. It's too easy to just push it along and say, here you go, you guys do this. We're here to sort of vet this, I think. Go ahead, Matt.
Right, and we are advisory to the select board, so I think, and the select board can ask planning. I'm not so sure that we should be asking planning. And so I think that's, our best, I think, Gary, if we go directly to planning, I think they can ignore us. And if we go to the select board, they can ignore us maybe too, but they're not supposed to. So, I think that maybe we'd be better to try that way.
Okay. Are there any other comments? I think we're going to benefit greatly from the next meeting when Shannon, what's her last name?
Hulst.
Comes and talks to us about floodplains and insurance and zoning. Leah and I were thinking that meeting would be a sort of a workshop meeting or a one topic meeting where she would get to talk, and it'd be a sort of a I don't know, not a refresher, but a primer to what we're about to do. It would lay the basis. It would answer. It would give us a chance to ask a lot of questions, given the task that we have in mind. So I would say for today's discussion, we're getting somewhere, but I think we'll be further down the road after we hear what she has to say and we ask her questions. Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks again, Peter. I'm sorry I keep jumping in. One quick suggestion might be to send to Shannon in advance of our next meeting our list of that Leah has put together, because I think it would be interesting to hear her reaction to that. How comprehensive are we being? Do you think we've captured the main points? Does she see things here that are glaringly missing? That would be great. And who knows, she may have some insight on the whole state law situation as well, that would maybe shorten our list. So that's it. Sorry I'll stop now.
Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Doug. Yes, I will definitely do that. We have a little bit of time, so I think if anybody has like specific questions or background info that they would like Shannon to speak on, if we can just generate a couple of topics so that I can prepare her for the next meeting, that would be helpful. So I've got the 2020 updated zoning bylaw that the state is mandating, and to discuss how FEMA maps work and all of that stuff, and insurance. Is there anything else?
Good silence. Do you guys think that you'll get ideas as she talks? I mean, I'm thinking that that'll help me based on today's discussion.
I'll have
You're
her.
not,
I'll see if she can also talk about, I think there were questions about building codes. And she had mentioned that the state is increasing the freeboard by a foot. So I can have her talk about that too.
and it'll come to me. The difference between the state's hold harmless law and what we think we want to do. What it may be, as Vince said, there may be a slim difference, but there might be something that she could explain about that.
Okay, I'm not sure if that's in her wheelhouse, but I can ask.
Okay. Matt?
Yeah, one thought I had is, there's houses as part of building, but then hardscaping and driveways and pools and things like that. What is the right way to address those? Are there some that should be, not in certain areas completely? And can we do that right away? I think sort of a best practices on that. We've been struggling with the pools in wetlands and pools in dunes, so I'd love to have more than just houses. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, and since we're going to go through this mess with maybe the HGC and HGC issues, will she have knowledge of that?
I believe she has some historic district knowledge. When I went to a presentation last week over on the Vineyard, she was giving a little bit of updates about that, so I can see.
Because I don't know. I mean, there's just so many things that we can't possibly think of yet. I like what Doug said about, we're not gonna get it all done right now, between the next meeting, by the end of the year, maybe even by the end of next year. It's not gonna happen, but I just think it's a process we need to go through rather than putting it off onto someone else. So. Okay. I'm not seeing any hands. So are we good waiting until we have the discussion at the next meeting on October 22nd when Shannon comes? Yes, everybody's putting a thumbs up. Okay. Then we can move on. Unless anybody has anything else. And is there anybody in the public who has a question? Go ahead, Leah.
Peter, at this time, if it's okay to read Jerry Koenig's second public comment, since it's regarding this agenda topic.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
So this was dated on Friday, October 4th. It said, "Good afternoon. Please ask under public comments how many members did their homework. As to ask how does section 138-8, which I emailed him back to clarify, he actually meant 139-8, which is part of the town zoning bylaw under the residential development, need to be modified to relate to the CRP? Question mark. Regards, Jerry Koenig." So Peter and I were discussing, and if it's okay with the committee, what we would like to do is write a response and then have it emailed to Mr. Koenig, and then it will be put in the packet for next meeting to answer his questions. Okay.
You guys are all good with that? Nod your heads. Yes. Tim? Tim's screen may be frozen. I'm not sure. Okay. Not hearing anybody say no. You good with that, Tim?
Sorry, my screen just froze. Yes, I am good with it.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we can move on then to new business. Committee on Natural Resources reports, Planning Board, Conservation Commission, SHAB, Select Board, Advisory Committee on Non-Voting Taxpayers, and other committee members. Does anyone have any new business? Doug?
Hearing nobody else, I'll go ahead.
Sure.
So I just wanted to share with the committee a little experiment that I did with ChatGPT, which is an AI tool. I used the latest free version to try to see if by taking the verbatim notes from our last meeting and pumping those into ChatGPT, that somehow we could get ChatGPT to spit out a lovely draft of our minutes. And I'll spare you all the details of to say after several hours of effort trying to get it to work, the result that we got was pretty close to not gibberish, but it was very inaccurate and a little bit alarming. If someone were to be depending on an AI tool like this one to generate accurate minutes, I think they would be very disappointed. So my take on this is that it's not ready for prime time yet, at least the version that I'm using, which is the latest free version. There's possible, I guess, improvements in more of the premium services that could deliver better results. But I am more skeptical now than I was prior to this experiment that AI is going to be of much help for us in the near term. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug. Tim?
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed to hear this, but so I'm behind on a few minutes. Leah, if I could ask you to just remind me which meetings I need to do the minutes on, I'll get to work on them.
Leah?
Tim, I sent you an email a little while ago about the two. It's only two less this meeting and then a meeting before, so you're not far behind.
Thank you.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, and I want to thank Doug for spending the time trying to make it work. I think I still contend we're not far away. When I see and I understand that it doesn't work now, but when I see the transcript that Zoom is doing, that's almost, verbatim and great, I know I've looked on it online a little bit and there's others that will sell you, AI that will turn you into minutes. There's a whole bunch. I'm not gonna spend the time or ask Doug or anyone else to spend the time, but I don't think we're far away. I've got my fingers crossed because I see how well the translations are. You can take the translations that they're doing on Zoom and translate it into different languages that are legible to those languages. They're not perfect probably, but people that are, I've shown some of them to tool, through GPT. I've shown them to other people who speak other languages and they know exactly what they're talking about. So it's amazing how quickly this is happening, and I have my fingers crossed that by this time next year or the year after, we'll have it figured out.
Okay, great. Well, if there's nothing else on new business, discussion of upcoming meeting dates and topics. The next meeting is October 22nd, 2024 on Zoom. I guess that's it. And we're getting to go outside and it's nice outside. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. Roll call vote. Matt Fee,
aye.
Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
chair votes aye. See you guys later.
Thanks, Pete.